Right, I think we are live. So the last stream we took a look at trying to do something in Blender based on the TikTok format or the portrait format, but it's kind of tricky. So a little experiment. What we might be able to do is try. So we're going to make another IMVU pose thing, but I'm going to try and experiment, see if we can optimize the layout of Blender. So let's see if this will work. No, it won't even work right now. So we need access to the layout options at the top there. Where's the plus button? So that's an issue already. So we need access to this little plus button, but as you decrease the size of Blender, these tabs obviously disappear, because what we want to do is click on the plus, just duplicate the current screen, which is default layout. Default layout. And then, so click on that, duplicate 001. So can we rename that? Where do we rename that? Oh, there we go. So let's call this TikTok 3D. And then we'll do the same thing again with layout. Plus, duplicate, double click, call this TikTok, and properties. No, outliner. Enter, because what we'll do now is grab that, move that up to there, mouse over, right click, join areas. Same again at the bottom here, join areas. So what we're doing is basically making the whole interface the properties panels, so that all we need to do is flip between our custom layouts for TikTok. So we'll have TikTok 3D. So merge. No, we don't need to do that. So grab, move that down to match that. Right click, join areas. Yoink. Right click, join areas. Yoink. So now let's resize that to screen. That to screen. And that to screen, like so. So now, yeah, oh, well, hang on, where are they? Yeah. See, the problem is that, oh, there we go. So TikTok 3D, TikTok outliner. So we have access to, it makes it a little confusing, but in terms of actually working, because otherwise we end up with a lot of buttons and scrunched up options on the side of the screen. So TikTok 3D, right, so view, sidebar. Let's see what this is like to use. Animation tool, append, Oh, we've got two. Why have we got two of those? I need one. Right, so make pose, export all bones. We won't really need any of the other options until we're ready to export. So hide that N. So there's our avatar, frame selected. Right, so pose select, pose mode. Oh, one thing we do need to make sure we've got, whoops, is auto key. Oh, that's why. Where's the oh, that's the timeline. We want dope sheet action editor. There we go. Right, so auto key, make pose, export all bones, get rid of the sidebar. Right, so quick pose. So let's do so somebody was asking about, or they were trying to create a pose that was reaching forward for an object, but the avatar was essentially facing backwards. So normally when you do something like that, you don't want to move the root widget. Leave that alone. What you want to do is move the, or rotate the pelvis control, which is this one, the square. And you rotate that. Obviously it's going to mess up the legs, but we can select the legs. Why is that not auto inserting, or is it? Yes, it is. What we can do is enable or disable that. That will show all the bones that are marked. So grab the legs, rotate those around, grab the arms or the hand controls and rotate those around like so. And we've essentially just turned the avatar around backwards. So if we reset all of that, zero pose, that will invert everything, or revert it. It'll switch it all back to the beginning again. So if you want to turn the avatar around, use pelvis. So let's grab that and the hand bones, or the arm controls and the leg controls, and move them all as a unit, like so. That's all we need to do. So the avatar would now let's do this. Move widget. No, is it that one? No, it's that one. Turn the waist. Knees. And add a little bit of twist. Grab the hand. Let's move the toolbar out of the way. So this is where it gets a little weird because we are at funny angles relative to the avatar and the skeleton. I'm going to use shortcut keys, so R for rotate, G for grab. Well, that kind of does the same thing for that particular bone, but where's the elbow? Elbow, shoulder, or clavicle. Whoops. So we can toggle. So we've got our shortcut keys, R and G. So R for rotate and G for grab. It kind of does the same thing depending on the bone that we've selected. But the difference between the toggles, the shortcut keys, and the tool is that if we press the shortcut keys, R and G, they activate the universal manipulation of the tool. So the tool will manipulate whatever is selected on all axes. Whereas if we use the tools, we have the widgets that appear that then allow us, depending on whether we've got, depending on whether we've got our orientation set to global or local or even normal, generally it's global or local, we can then manipulate the armature in a particular direction. So for instance, with something like this, if you press the R key as opposed to using the widget, same with the other spine bones, got to be careful for going too far though. So that's our hose. So let's just like so, it's grabbing onto something. Fingers. Fingers. Oops. Undo. So let's say the avatar is grabbing onto something. And pulling it. So that is our pose. So when we create the pose, let's just go into view, viewpoint, right. So when we create our poses, let's just save this actually, file, save as. Oops. I might make these files available for TikTok subscribers, but we'll see. Save as. So when you're creating your pose, depending on what it is that you're doing, we want to try and add a sense of movement, momentum, weight to the character. So although you can keep the character centered on the center line, which is what this is, what we can do is just offset different elements of the pose to give the impression that something is going on. So there are all sorts of technical terms to describe what's going on here. And it's too easy to get lost because of that, because of the technical names that are associated with all of this stuff. But all you need to remember is that when you're creating your pose, you're doing it relative to weight and motion. So something like this ordinarily, obviously the avatar can't stand upright with both feet behind the center line because that's obviously off balance. But because the avatar is holding on to something, we can do that because all the tension creates its own center line essentially, but it allows us to have the mass of the body on the center line whilst the legs are off kilter because it's offset by the hand. So when you're creating your poses, keep all of that in mind in terms of just weight, momentum, resistance, all that sort of stuff that relates to how the body positions itself relative to other things. And when you do that, or when you keep that in mind, it makes posing your characters much easier to do. And it doesn't have to be particularly complicated because all the bits that we need are provided by the toolkit and we can do whatever we want to do. So if we save this, so save, we're in Blender 2.4, no, 4.0, so we can save incremental. This is not available for 3.6 or below, so we're going to save incremental. So that's now added. An incremental number to our pose. So now we can save this. Well, we saved it, but what we can do now, why isn't that, oh, it's because we've got the summary collapsed. Right, so what we want to do now is, let's just double check save over that file. View, sidebar. So double check, make pose, export all bones. We don't need morph controls for this because it's just a static pose, so disable. And it'll switch back to object mode, which is annoying. That's it. And then click on the export button. Blender will do its thing. We'll get a confirmation message, but we can't see it at the moment because we're off kilter with the layout. But it's done its thing. This is the part that's needed for a static pose to work in Studio. So in Studio, now this won't be able to fit this on screen properly, so we'll have to keep yoinking it back and forth. So create. We're going to use a PID and derive from PID the empty mood because it's a simple way of testing the pose is functional. So 10,945,930. Enter. There's the empty pose. There's a preview. So we want to derive. So there's the avatar, and all we need to do is load in the FBX, import FBX, browse to the file, which will be prepended pose, which is the tool that was used to create the content. So there's pose, pose test, pose. Where is it? Where did that save to? File, save as. Oh, TikTok. Yeah, so this is what happens when you have too many files. Oh, right, of course. It's that one. So what we forgot to do. So select the armature, go back into pose mode, rename this TikTok pose to make this easier. TikTok pulling. Because the toolkit, when it exports your pose file, the FBX, it uses the name that's associated with the action, not the file name. So to make this easier to track down where the pose is or where it's been saved to, rename the action. So TikTok pulling in this case. So let's just save over that again, save, and then we can just re-export. Click the button, export. So that's done its thing. It'll do it quicker this time, second time around. So now we should have there it is. TikTok pulling. So select, open. So we're going to import now. So it's found the bits that we need. Set up FBX. We don't need any meshes. Materials. It's got our animation. That's what we do need. That's what it's going to bring in. Import. So it'll bring in the file, but it won't do anything with it. So there it is. So we want to be in component now. Action. New action. Then in the action properties panel, we want to name this stance.standing ensemble, new ensemble, and in the asset tab or asset option skeleton we should have, there it is. So we want to set this as it's a static pose, start frame 1, end frame 2, infinite loops 0. We can disable gaze or enable disable gaze. That will stop the head from spinning around. Apply. So all the other bits and pieces were okay. Preview. And we should get, there is our pose. It's as simple, air quotes, as simple as that. And then obviously all we need to do, file, save as, save. Then in the info panel, we choose our icon. Now they're going to be a bit weird because the selector has trouble with these kinds of things, with poses, furniture and room. It works well with clothing, but anything else it has trouble with. So what we would probably have to do is take a screen grab of our pose and then load in a custom icon, so 100 pixels by 80 pixels, so 100 wide, 80 high. Drop that in for both of them. So I'm going to do both of them. Change the name if we want. Profit. And then that would be it. And of course, if we want to make it drivable, set our options down at the bottom here. So yeah, if we don't have an icon, we have to upload one. So take a screenshot of the avatar and it'll use that for both of them. So that's classic and, as it says there, desktop mobile. Change the name, price, set the options, whether we want them drivable, etc., and then just submit to the catalog. That is a pose using IMVU's toolkit for Blender. So we'll call it quits there, keep these live streams relatively short, but they will all be uploaded, re-uploaded to YouTube or somewhere else, or Rumble, so they can be archived. Right, so we'll call it quits there, and we'll see you on the next stream, probably doing another pose. And yeah, so if you subscribe to any of the socials, might be able to pass this FBX on as a freebie. Right, so, oh yeah, so it's catsbits.com for everything. Or catsbits on all the socials, or catsbits.com website. Right, we shall see you anon.